Welcome to Elevate with Elsner. Join us for inspiring conversations with individuals who have transformed their lives and are making a difference through the work that they do. And now, here's your host, Blake Elsner.
Welcome back to the Elevate with Elsner podcast. I'm your host, Blake Elsner, and today we have an incredible guest joining us. Someone who has spent over 8 years coaching entrepreneurs and small business owners, helping them build, grow, and elevate their ventures. He's the owner of Emerging Executive, Now Properties LLC, and co-host of the Gateway to Freedom Investing Conference. With more than 100 real estate deals under his belt, generating over $1 million in revenue, he's a master at navigating complex negotiations and finding creative solutions. Please welcome Josh Wiesler to the show. Josh, we're thrilled to have you here today, and we can't wait to dive into your journey.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to getting in touch with the community and helping anybody I can. So that's the big thing. Is what I went out to start this was at least provide value to one person, and that's all that matters. If it's not myself, because I know I'll take value, so there'll at least be one. If not, there'll be multiple. I can see people listening, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback, and the information people I think are gathering through like people like yourself is helping them kind of take the leap and kind of put themselves out there, and that's kind of the goal, get uncomfortable. Oh yeah, for sure, without a doubt.
So like in your early beginnings, how did you like get started in personal development? I know you've had a ride of, I know Wade, I've seen you on Facebook. So just kind of tell us about the old Josh, I guess you would say.
Oh man. Well, old Josh, that's the first time I've heard it kind of put like that. So old Josh, back in the day, I remembered I was actually over the weekend, I was watching some videos that I started like 7-8 years ago. And it's like, if you don't watch your old stuff and kind of cringe, it means you're not really growing. Right. And just, I was shooting videos and I was doing personal development coaching. I was working in for a company selling small engine airplane parts. It was a 9-to-5. It was a sales position. I was making, not a great amount of money, but it was a steady, like Monday through Friday. I had the weekends off, with having, 3 growing kids between me and my wife. It was stable, but there was just a lack of happiness. There was a lack of fulfillment. There was like that feeling of there's got to be more in life than what I'm currently experiencing. And that kind of led me into the personal development world where and that's what I think a lot of people end up getting into the personal development world, where they're looking for something greater than what they're currently experiencing in their life. And as you get further down the line, you realize, the stuff that you're searching for, it doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come from all these exterior things. And so that's been the journey over these last 7, 8, 9 years. It was transitioning. I was selling airplane parts, and then I started, I was buying the house we currently live in, and I had put money away, and I was dealing with a mortgage lender, and it was a referral because I had started real estate, tried to get into real estate about a decade before that, and had no luck. I was driving for dollars, collecting addresses, but never made anything happen. And I had gone through a training, and I ended up putting my 4 months notice in at my job, selling airplane parts, and I was about a month and a half out while buying this new home. So I didn't know what was going to happen, and the universe normally provides. And so I'm dealing with this mortgage broker that was a referral from a decade ago with a guy I had met, and the guy reached out and said, "Hey man, I know we worked before in the past, and I know you're talking to my mortgage lender guy. I heard you're shopping rates, and I heard you're shopping other people." He's like, "You're going to use me. You're going to use our guy. You are." And just that kind of confidence and kind of how he positioned that, something in my gut was like, I probably need to work with this guy. I don't know how it's going to look. So I sent him an email back saying that exact stuff of like, "Hey, I don't know how it's going to look, but something's telling me we're going to work together." He said, talk to his acquisition person. I talked to her, tracked her down for a couple weeks, follow up, trying to get in there, and then ended up ultimately convincing her And the guy said, "Hey, I'll bring you on and I'll teach you acquisitions and real estate. I'll also coach you, but it's going to cost you $1,000 and you're going to have to close 3 deals before you get that money back." So it was you're going to pay to play, but you have an opportunity to get it back. So definitely don't recommend this, but I put my notice in at my job, like for sure, drew that line in the sand about 4 weeks out and quit my job with about $2,000 in the bank account, no prospects. Oh, hang on one second. Sorry.
You do recommend that, as we'll say here, because so we better back up and say no, you do recommend it, because look at you now. No, continue on.
Yeah. So I'm someone that like will bet on themselves. Not really. Now I've learned understanding more of how that will impact you and the people around you. So it's been a heck of a learning lesson over these last 8-9 years for sure. So took the leap. It took me about 4 months. Don't know how I made it. We made it through that skin of the teeth, but ended up getting my first deal. Got a couple after that. Ended up working with them for about 3.5 years. And he was a trainer. Like he was a national speaker. And so he also trained me on cold calling and trained me on coaching and trained me on a couple different things. And so really kind of over those 3.5 years, learned a lot about the real estate, off market, getting direct to contact with sellers, learning wholesaling, and really just like coaching. I love the coaching, everything about that. Every time like I was learning more in coaching, I kept falling in love with it greater and greater. And so we got to a point where I also wanted to start learning more of like the project management. We were just doing wholesales at that time, which is navigating transactions off market between buyers and sellers. And I wanted to learn more project management and have long-term rentals. And so I went and worked with another company at that point. We parted ways very amicably, and I went and worked with another company. And I came in as a project manager for them, but very quickly found out, they also brought me in because they knew my acquisition background as well as my training background. And so I trained their acquisition team that they brought on for the first 4 months. And then the last 4 months, that's when Corona really started happening and there was a transition. And so we finalized all the projects that we had. And then they decided to shift more towards a virtual model. Well, someone that's a project manager and not really looking to be in the acquisition side like that anymore. We had a conversation where it ended up being like, hey, I'm being brought back in. The acquisition people also got let go for something they had done. And then it was like, hey, we're going to have you cold calling. And at that point, it just didn't really mesh. It wasn't in alignment with kind of where I wanted to go. And so I had a conversation with them about like, hey, if we're not really going to get into like the projects again and all that, let's have that conversation. Because otherwise, like, what's the plan on getting me back out there? And, if you guys are just afraid to have that conversation, let's have that conversation. And they said, yeah, we didn't know how to have that conversation with you. We were just kind of in the limbo. And so they said, yeah, we're going to part ways here and we're going to let you go. That was like a week before my daughter's, I think, 12th birthday. She's getting ready to be 16 in about a week and a half. So that was about 4 years ago. And then I had to ask myself that question again. I'm back in that position where it's like, I don't have revenue. I don't have, really prospects. Like, what do I want to do? And the answer came up. It's like, you want to be a coach, you want to consult. And so I started a consulting company, got a handful of clients right out of the gate. And then I met my current partner, Grant Hickman. Actually, I'd met him a couple years before, but I reached out to him because he was one of the savviest business guys I had met up until that time. And we had a couple conversations. He actually was starting a coaching company, and the people that he was going to coach with actually, they left, started their own brokerage, and took a couple agents with them. So he was kind of in that same boat. And so over the span of a couple months, he actually tried to persuade me numerous times to not work together, which I'm finding now is a great sales technique because it makes you want things even more. Right. And so it's one of those, like, you're definitely like, no, you don't want this. Right. So we ended up working together. We started what we at the time had determined was an investment brokerage, meaning we were wholesaling again. But I was doing it with mentoring other investors and like they would generate the leads. I would help them close as well as navigate infrastructure and put those things into play. And it worked great on like me leading other investors as far as like a mentorship. We had a mentorship program, which was great. We made close to 200 grand that year. And then we also wanted to start growing and coaching and leading other investors as well. And so we brought other higher performing investors in that weren't needing like mentorship, but like business development. And we found out real quick that, and Blake, I'm sure you understand this dealing with other investors. They don't like to run other people's systems normally. They also don't like, it's kind of like herding cats in running infrastructure in other people's systems. And so we found out real quick, probably in the span of like less than a year, we had a little success, but we found that just the business model, if we were going to leverage and make grow, it wasn't working. So we created a coaching model at that point. We brought on a couple investor clients. We also found that like our principles and what we call now our executive flow actually works for most service businesses. So now we coach small business owners that are service providers, anywhere from 500 or anywhere from like 200 grand to, $1 million plus on the back end with our like higher end service packages. And then we've got a couple other services where like, regardless of where you're at in your business, whether you're just starting out, you need some clarity, you need a year plan. We have that as well, and as services for that. So that's the coaching side. And then the story around how I got into the multifamily. So I'd always wanted to hold rentals. I'd done some lease backs and I'd done some short term, some just short holds in order to like flip and do other things, but I never had a long-term rental. And so I actually someone reached out to ask me to help them sell a multifamily off market. And it was overpriced at the time. So I negotiated like a $15,000 fee up front. Like, hey, if we're going to sell this and what you're asking for, asking 450, I want 15K of that. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Totally on board with it. We started moving it, and we didn't really have a lot of movement up front because of the price, which I had anticipated. And we ended up getting a offer on it at 380, right before I was going out of town. And so the buyer wanted to walk through, and the seller accepted it at 380. And I was very surprised. And, I was out of town. So I had one of our investor brokerage people at the time come through and walk it for me while I was out of town. Her name's Laura Lennington. And she walked it. And then I got back into town, and the buyer ended up seeing it and walked because it had a lot of roaches in it. A couple different tenants were in a bad shape. It was very low income, very rundown, like roach infested. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I got back, and the seller's like, hey, like, does he need help? Like, I'll do down payment assistance. I'll just take a note on the back end. So he was like very motivated. Right. And I talked at our meeting, I said, man, if I could just find a partner for this, that like balances my opportunity points, I said, man, I would do this. And Laura looked at me and she goes, well, I'd be interested, because she walked it. And I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. So we went back to the seller and we negotiated. I mean, he's already taken 380. I had a $15,000 fee in it, and he just needed to sell it, even taking like additional wanting to seller finance. I went back to him and I said, hey, Barry, what if we just took over your payments for what you owe on it with the bank, and then we paid you the difference in a down payment, but we buy it at like 370 since you already got 15 and you were willing to take 380. And he said, deal. And so we unknowingly made this offer, not expecting it to go through, but it actually did, because I hadn't done a subject to deal before, and neither had she. And so at that point, we brought in a couple different mentors, one that's known in the creative space, Jeff Kaufman, and then another one who ended up being our private lender. We knew he had a lot of multifamilies and like a $40 million portfolio at that time. We wanted his view on it. He assessed the deal. He had looked at it. He said, yeah, this looks great for you guys. You're going to, we were asking for 65 from our private lenders that we were going to go recruit. And he said, full honesty, I'd probably be interested in loaning on this. And he said, you guys could probably actually get away with borrowing 75, which he makes more money on it. So, and it provided a little space for us. And we said, your money is a little more costly than what we were able to acquire. But we'll pay that extra fee if you also meet with us once a month and make sure that we're on track with this. And it's not going to end up biting us in the butt and we're just doing stuff that is on track. And he goes, yeah, I probably would have done that anyway. So yeah, let's do this. So yeah, we closed on that 2 years ago in July. We have since raised all the rents from, I think they were at $425 when we took it over. Now we're getting $675. We've turned 8 of the 11 units at least once or twice to upscale the tenants. And it's very stable now. Like when we first started, it was every week, like multiple hours. And now I think I've been in there 3 hours, 4 hours. I actually have a pest spray there today for maintenance, and we had a new tenant in. So, but it's like 5 hours a month now, maybe. And it's stable, and we have a great community in there, and everybody knows that like the health of the building is what matters. So that's my multifamily. And then we bought a mixed use building that we bought anticipating doing the same thing with, we bought it seller finance, and we were planning on renting it out. That one took a turn based on politics from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we sold that, made some money on it. And now we're negotiating like a 6-pack, a 6-unit deal with a seller in South City. We're going to look at those tomorrow. But yeah, it like multifamilies is where my zone is. Single families, like Laura loves single families, and my partner Grant has a bunch of single families. For me, I like the multifamily, just more doors under one roof. And it's just a different animal, like especially if you got multi-layers. If the tenant on top has a leak, it's going to affect the bottom and vice versa. And yeah, so it's been a quite fun journey on that. And then the investor conference is the last one. I co-host that. We did that last year. We had 17 speakers. My partner, Rich, one of the things in my coaching company I'm very focused on is helping people think or accomplish the things they thought were impossible or were kind of like a dream, help them catalyze their dreams. And Rich, who runs AREA in South City, he had me speak previously during the year. He had a panel in December, the year prior to last year, and it was the biggest attendance he had. And then in passing in the back of the room after our panel was done, he just said, man, I'd really like to do this on a bigger scale and do like a conference. And I, kind of waved it off. It was right before the holidays. After the holidays, I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, that thought kind of kept sticking with me. If you're interested in doing something like that, I'd be interested in kind of helping you make that happen. I don't know what that looks like, but, we can talk. And so that ended up being an 11-month process. We ended up doing that in November. We met by happenstance, somebody through networking that did Rich Dad Poor Dad events, Robert Kiyosaki. And so like she managed them. So that's Mary freaking Kane. She's our event manager. She was kind of the glue that made the event pop. And so then this year we're doing 35. Mary became from a service provider. Now she's a partner in the event. And so like now the three of us are holding this event, and we've got 30 plus speakers, like I said, October 17th, 18th, and 19th. But again, it's just one of those things where, that kind of idea is sparked in somebody's head and helping it come to fruition and happen out in the world, and then learning through that process. So it's been a heck of a journey on those two events as well. So.
Yeah. And kind of wrapping into all that, it's putting yourself in the right rooms. And that's what you basically have just kind of gone through right there in your journey is not only are you're either serving to get in the room, or you got to pay. Like you say, you got to pay to play sometimes. And that's where some of the biggest growth happens. And you get to put yourself, that's what I didn't realize on myself is like, hey, you get to put yourself next to some of the smartest individuals, some of the best investors, some of the best business owners in these rooms, but you're going to have to pay to get in there. And that's kind of a hard thing, I think, people to realize, like, hey, you're paying to get into these rooms. Yeah.
No, that's a great point too, because I can say for sure, like I paid to get into the room that ended up being the connection for the mentor for our 11 unit. And not only that, one of the things, what I also say that I wasn't aware of at the time, and that's a great point, is I paid to get into that room, and I felt so much a fish out of water in that room. Like definitely the least successful and least capable person in that room. And over time, as you're in those rooms, especially with higher caliber people that are all about collaboration and growth and like building people, you find real quick that you can provide them value by just being yourself, but you may not even understand the value that you actually have. One of the things that I've seen and our private lender, he actually brought to my attention. He invited me he invited me out one day, and he's just like, you know what, man, honestly, you kind of seem like somebody that would just be a really good friend. And like, I was like, oh, okay. Like, and you don't even realize that is a value to somebody because you don't value it in yourself a lot of times. And so you show up with these talents and these skills into these areas and into these rooms thinking you don't belong, but it's only because you don't actually see your blind spots. And that's one of the things we really deal with in our coaching company is like helping people notice or see their blind spots, discover where their blind spots are, and either clean them up or like validate yourself where you're not validating yourself in those blind spots. So yeah, it's huge.
And I can tell you from a first-hand standpoint that myself, it unlocked incredible things just getting myself in the right room. And what you don't realize is how fast like that investment returns, whether it's through, like you're saying, you got a multifamily deal. I've already gotten a deal through rooms I've been in. So like, it doesn't take long to like recoup these investments, and they're not even necessarily investments. They're personal growth initiatives. Like you're doing stuff that other people aren't going to do because it's so uncomfortable. And like you said, like for uniting like seasoned investors and newcomers, those newcomers are going to have to put themselves in that uncomfortable spot. Right. Yeah. But that's where the growth and the magic happens.
Yeah. And to touch on that point, like a lot of people, and I used to look at it this way too, is like, I used to look at it as a cost as opposed to it's an investment. And it's not an investment in the room. It is actually an investment, because that's where a lot of people get stuck is I won't pay that money because I don't see how I can get the return on the investment, not that there isn't a return on the investment. And so it's actually how I see it and help people understand it is an investment in yourself and the belief in yourself. And if that return doesn't come, that pain that you're going to be like seeing and experiencing, that is also going to be a return on your investment, because that pain is going to get you to a point where you will take action in a different way, or you're going to see the results out the door. So like you said, you're either going to start seeing it immediately, and it all is going to depend on how you come into it. What you're searching for, you will find. So
totally. And they do interconnect, and it's like, if you just kind of work on one, usually the other one falls in place. Mostly working on yourself, then the rest of the stuff falls in place. So I seem like when you say like, when your back's against the wall, the answer always seems to come up. And you kind of told about 3 or 4 different stories where your back was right up against the wall and you said, well, here we go. And then sure enough, the answer.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. It's what came up for me. There was something that came up for me over the weekend too, that I was because we are right now, even I'll share, like we are rebuilding our coaching company. Like we had a first year, we had a pretty good success. We had people out of the gate, and then we had different results varying depending on the type of clientele. And as you evolve, as in any industry, you're going to evaluate like who's your best client, who's the clients that were a little difficult, how were the ones like that paid without an issue, who are the ones that, and you're in the same way in the real estate field. I'm sure you've got clients where it's like, man, these guys were so easy. They didn't have any issues. It was like, man, like cutting hot knife through butter. It was phenomenal, like a great experience. And then you've got the other ones where it's like, okay, why does this seem like it's not working how I want it to work, right? So it's an evaluation process, and then you rebuild. And so the thing that came up, and kind of touching on the point you said earlier, there is a thing where, there's a phrase is like, as long as you don't quit, you're going to make it, right? And that's really true, because the only version that makes it is the one that doesn't quit. If you quit, that version of you will never make it unless you get to another painful point where you've got to restart. And that was one of the things, like in my journey, that like I took a 5, 6, 7 year hiatus from real estate. And then I was selling airplane parts, and my life was like, I ended up going and getting into adult children of alcoholics, which is a 12-step program. And that phrase, like the first step, keeps coming up, especially like nowadays, is, you know, my life has become unmanageable and I need support. And that's really like when you get to that point of pain, like, okay, this is unmanageable for me. I have to do something else. You are acknowledging like your ego has been in your way the entire time. And the version of you that makes it work gets the ego out of the way in order to find the answer that makes it work. And a lot of times you only build that character. In my experience, and with a lot of people that prevent themselves from moving forward in powerful ways, it's not that they don't know what to do or they don't know like they don't want the success. It's that they don't believe their character will support them when they get there enough to where they won't self-sabotage it. They won't like cheat on their spouse. They won't go and make a bad investment. They won't end up drinking their life away, whatever their vices are. So a lot of times the only place that character is built is when you are suffering and when you're in struggle, until you realize you don't have to do that anymore. And that's where a lot of times that pivot starts happening in a more powerful way, because then you get to start designing things you get to start designing things with intention versus I'm just reacting because I know I don't want the pain anymore. And when you're also, like, to tag on lastly, when you're using pain as a motivator, it's great until that pain's no longer there, which creates that inconsistency because you're really just using it to get relief as opposed to designing a life that you want. So
Yeah, right. That work life integration, how you can do that properly. No, it's pretty impressive. Like, I was looking at the picture of like your office, and you make it feel very like, I don't want to say office or your coaching office, I should say.
Workspace. Yeah.
Yeah. Workspace. Yeah.
Yeah.
You make it feel like, when I look at it, it's kind of like, wow, it's kind of comfortable, welcoming, at home, kind of like,
Oh, yeah.
Where you do feel comfortable. And that's a big part too, because then it's going to help people feel comfortable in the room, and then it helps kind of flush out that stuff. And I had to put myself in the right room and I know what it was like, man. It is tough. You got to get in there and you just got to let it out. And once you let it out, it feels incredible. And like the world, like, decides to turn for you. You don't have to do a lot. People start to come to you. Like, life becomes truly incredible when you start to understand this stuff. But it is very difficult to understand it. I joke, it took me 31 years and now I'm 32, and I wish I would have learned in my 20s, because you see some of these people in their 20s, but then you also see people in their 50s, 60s just figuring it out. And that's okay, because there's never a bad day to start, right?
Right. No, it's always working for you. And and so in regards to our space, without a doubt, like it is one of the places where like I love being, because it really is a space where, for us, how we kind of look at it, our businesses are personal development tools, right? And so we've got these blind spots where we've either created belief systems where we've condensed two beliefs that are conflicting into working with each other, and then they're in competition, so that keeps us from moving forward. Or we've created a blind spot where we've got two things that actually should be working together, and we've separated them, saying they won't work together. And so the only way to really let that go and process that is to be able to honestly and authentically share it, and be transparent about how that story is showing up for you, so that you can acknowledge it, you can be with it, and then you get to make a new choice from it. And we do that by creating things like vision statements that are transformation statements with like skill sets you want to work on. It's really a matter of how you want to show up and who you want to be, and then practice that over and over again. And the only way to do that is to really feel supported and have people in your corner that you can rely on when the world is showing up. But they will help you understand, it's like, yeah, it's showing up because it is you're the source of it, you're creating it, and it's not how you want to show up. So we need to get honest about that evaluation. And like, there's been tears, there's been anger, there's been frustration. Like, all those things are valid, but are they serving us anymore? And so that's really that's why it's super important to have a space where you can get into the root of those things, because as entrepreneurs, and especially as men, like, I know I wasn't raised to grow up honoring those things in my own experience and my journey. Like, you don't do that because, boys don't cry and boys need to be tough and they need to be this. And then, women are in entrepreneurship as well. Like, they're taught they have to be tough and strong and don't take any shit and don't. And I apologies for the cursing if
No, you're
that's
good.
not how it works.
Much less even be in it. There, I mean, like
Yeah.
it's a whole powerhouse of that.
Right.
I mean, I completely, understand from those standpoints of, getting yourself as, some of these people that are top experts, like these, what Melanie Claiborne and Lawrence Hopkins, that you're going to have at this conference, and to get them into like your room and to coach, you obviously have to, like, welcome these people and provide value to them. And that's the difference, I think, of a friend and an ally. When you talk about friends, it's like, these are your friends, but when you mean that, you're talking, hey, these are allies. These are people that are going to pick you up when you're down. They're going to hold you accountable for certain things. They're going to, actually care about putting food on your table for your family rather than just hanging out with you. That's a big difference, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And a huge piece of that, like in your own journey, is when you start surrounding yourself with those kind of people, that's when you're going to start making the movements. Because just in our own journey in coaching, like my experience over the last year and a half, is the people that, and including myself, the people that will make the biggest moves the quickest are the ones that are ready to let go of the old stuff that's not serving them. They're not tolerating it anymore. And tolerating is that phrase that, I'm just getting really understanding how that looks. But it's when we're defending the reasons why the story is the way it is versus like pondering and really evaluating and interrogating it in a way that's like, okay, why am I doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, creating, and here's the thing, like, one of the processes we use, like, creating action items and like tactics to go out into the world and go and execute is great. But if it's not committed to, like, I loved it. It happened about a year ago with one of our guys, Corey Boyles. I'll never forget it. We worked on one of his things for like a half hour, and the group was great, supported him. We had a great experience, got all this information, like he had some movements, and then we got all these action items, and we had like 5 or 6 action items to help him move. And I was like, okay, great, Corey. Now you've got these 5 action items. How much can you get done by next week? And he looked at him and he goes, yeah, I'm not going to do any of those by next week. And it was like, oh, okay. So there's a piece missing, and it's really that commitment piece. And you've got you've got to let go of the old story. And then what are you committed to being and executing moving forward? And then really, like, it's not easy to be that committed. And my dog actually taught me this. I'll tell a short story around commitment. My dog, Toby, our first dog, we just got a second one, but our first dog, Toby, I had dogs when I was young and when I was growing up, and I loved them. And then I had dogs a couple times as I was growing and being an adult, and it just wasn't a joyful experience. And I was like, what changed? Because my wife wanted a dog. She was very adamant. She's like, it's going to be good for our family. Our kids need one. Like, I think it's going to help us grow, do all this. And really, my wife got fired, I think, a month after we got our dog, and really, like, the dog helped her go through that process. Probably greater than anything else. But what I understood in that process of going from, that old phrasing, my wife wanted a dog, I didn't want a dog, so we ended up getting a dog. I had to get to the point where I wasn't going to fight having a dog if we were going to get a dog. So I knew not wanting a dog was a me thing. And so I had to get, and this is how it works in our business too, I had to get honest about really why didn't I want a dog. And I found out through that investigation that I loved the fun of a dog, which is what I experienced when I was a kid. I did not enjoy the responsibility of a dog when I was an adult. And so that is really what the commitment ends up being. Like, we are business owners. And so the responsibility, and like the one that I'm going through in our business right now, So that commitment piece is enjoying the excitement and the perceived outcome and the joy and the fun. And it's also learning how to enjoy the responsibility of it and being able to do the responsibility of it regardless of the situation, right? Some people
Right.
call it discipline. That's great. But yeah, like for now, the one in our business is like committing and being the responsibility of being the sales generator and being the lead generator and closing sales and doing and building the business and structuring it and growing it and leveraging it and like being the new version that goes out and grows it the way we want it to grow, versus like understanding like, oh, we haven't had this result, we haven't had this. Like it's the same thing in business. You've got to figure out what is the where is the commitment lacking, and then figure out yourself enough to understand how to get yourself to that commitment and get yourself to move, one way, shape, or form, whether that's a blind spot that's holding you back, whether it's a commitment that you've had that's false, whatever it ends up being, like that's what it really is going to require. So
Totally. And I know the dog thing because been down that route. I got 2 of those. And then one kid comes and my wife decides that she's not going to really like the dogs anymore. Then the second kid comes and she's really not going to like the dogs anymore. And I'm like, wait, you drove 6 hours to pick up one of these dogs and now you're not going to like them? Wait, what's going on here? No.
Yeah.
But they do come in certain ways where, like you say, I joke, I go, hey, you're petting Red right now. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just loving on Red. And that's a little thing that like dogs provide. And like you said, that's pretty cool to hear that story about your wife and getting through tough times with a dog, because like they say, it's a man's best friend or a woman's best friend, however you want to state that. But another thing I see is, like you say, people sometimes will jump from room to room. And those are the people that I think are somewhat lost, where they think, hey, the next greatest thing is in the next room. Like they kind of they'll put themselves in your coaching room and say, hey, okay, I didn't get anything in a week or a month or even 6 months sometimes. And then they jump from to the next place and the next place. And I got to say, like, one thing that I've done is I put myself in the rooms and I knew what rooms I was putting myself in. And I knew that I was going to be committed and I was going to stay in those rooms for the duration of quite a while until this basically body and mind and everything was functioning properly. So I'm sure you see people jumping from room to room. So when somebody comes over to you, do you say, hey, where have you been prior to this, and kind of what's your accountability looked like prior to coming here?
Yeah, we have had a couple people like that that have come through, and we run in the same circles with like Kitco. I've had a couple of his clients that have come over to us, and like vice versa, we coached back and forth. And so no, one of those things, and I didn't think it, and again, this is the the evolution as a business owner. You have those blinders on where it's like, hey, this is a startup business, it's going to be different with us and them. And you find out like, and I have got a great example. And for me as well, like I take examples from my personal life into how business operates, because how we do anything is how we do everything, right? And so I equate it now, like I'm very present to the fact of, like if you think coming into our experience is going to be different, or it's going to solve something you were missing at the other experience, yet you really weren't getting the results, it's not a matter of like, we're going to show you something that's going to, like, I call it the destination addiction, right? Whether it's that new coaching room, whether it's the new CRM software, whether it's the new dialer, whether it's the new hire, anytime that you're like, oh, this will solve the problem I have. No, it's a disconnect in that belief system, is really the situation. So yeah, we haven't, but now I'm very present to, and have had it recently where, it is something that does happen. And I'm very present to the fact of like, how do you think it's going to be different here than it was there? So yeah, it is something to be present to. And there's a saying that I'm very present to now, that really sticks out having this conversation is rose colored glasses. I didn't realize what that was. I thought it was like, oh, everything's rose colored and it's great and it's all this. No, rose-colored glasses is what keeps you from seeing red flags because everything is the same color. It's all rosy. You're not going to see red. And so that now hits even greater of like, oh, okay, so I need to take the rose-colored glasses off here. Not a sale is just a sale to have a sale. It's really, how do I want those sales to look? How does the experience need to be in the experience with our coaching clients? How do we want that interaction to work? How do we want their experience to be in this? And if it's really just I'm coming and signing up with you guys thinking it's going to be a magic pill, it's probably not going to be a long-term servicing solution. It's probably going to be one of our like one-off services of either like our consult or our half day to get you like understanding your landscape and then letting you deal with that landscape for a while before you really show up into one of our rooms, because those experiences are normally one where it's more of like pulling people to try and get them to move versus it's helping support them on their way up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I like the red roses part. When you do, hey, you're not going to see the red flags. That makes a lot of sense. And it's not like I'm saying like, hey, don't put yourself in multiple rooms, because people provide different value. I'm in multiple rooms. You're in multiple rooms. And that's the thing. Like, and you can overlap stuff. It's just like, don't jump from the next one to the next one, because like you say, you have to actually put in the work. There is no magic. It's like Zepbound. I'm taking Zepbound. It doesn't just magically take off the weight. Like you actually gotta eat right. You gotta move your body, and then it'll come off. So you got to have accountability too. And like I said, there are multiple places where you should be, like a room like yourself and with Grant Hickman. I mean, Grant's one of the top, I would say, financial guys in real estate in the St. Louis, St. Charles area. So I know in myself, I know him and what you guys provide. So like that would be a totally different room that I'm not in per se. Like I'm in Kitco's room. I'm in building my brand with McChesney. And so like I'm in different spots where I'm with Sebastian building my podcast and doing all these different things, different bubbles. But what I say is there's reasons to join different rooms and be in different rooms. It's just not to, hey, go from one to the next.
No. And hey, we'd love to have you in our room. We can talk about that later. But no, like I said, I take a lot of lessons from life, and the thing that for me really sticks out in regards to that, and I used to be a serial monogamist until I met my current wife, and like we've been together for going on, and I think it's 11 years, right? And I say current wife because I was divorced once, but I found myself, and really I credit her, and I don't credit her. I credit her triggering the realization for me that really kind of started my personal development journey. Is I was having an argument with her. I remember it like it was yesterday, having an argument with her in our kitchen in Granite City in our old duplex. And I was there, and we were having the same argument that I had with my previous two long-term relationships, including my ex-wife. And at that point, it really hit me. I was like, oh, I'm the common denominator. And that's what's going to happen if you're jumping room to room. It's I watched a video, and they had a great analogy to it. It's like, no, you're going location to location, but guess what? You're just picking your baggage up in one location, taking it to the next one and setting it down, thinking that the location's going to handle your baggage. You still have to unpack that crap, and you still have to make your baggage lighter so that you don't carry it on this journey with the location you're at. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like, jumping room to room is not gonna help, but knowing the intention of why you're signing up in a room makes all the difference. So it's a great point.
Totally. And the intention behind it, if the intention is there and you're there to grow and help provide value to the other individuals, there's going to be value to yourself. And that's what like I said, I never understood that. And it took me so long to finally realize, like, hey, not only are you going to be happier, you're going to be fulfilled, but you're also going to reap benefits. Like, everybody wins. And what's interesting is when you put yourself in a community, I always joke, like, you guys are all, and we're kind of all interconnected, is everybody wins from each other. And that's one thing, is people are there to pull you up. And it's not like, hey, I'm just going to give you a ticket to put you in this room so I can take your money. No, it's so that you can actually grow and provide value and elevate yourself to that next level.
Yeah. So speaking on that, I had a conversation with Bryson Duvall last week. You know Bryson, right?
Great guy, smart guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So he's one of our clients, just renewed with us like for another year. And the conversation was about like growing our room and having more people in our room. And one of the things that he shared with me that I wasn't aware of, that he really got out of the room, with having all the people in. And I'm experiencing this now, looking back, seeing like these are the type, and it's why I joined rooms, and what I love getting out of those rooms is that we as entrepreneurs, especially ones that have that like giving and servant mindset, we actually get things from helping other people go through their trials and tribulations and the things they get stuck in their business. He's like, really, I enjoyed the group because like even the days I don't want to show up to like deal with my stuff, if I'm there to help other people, I know I get something out of it and I move myself forward regardless. And that's something that, like, for me, I wasn't really present to, but now I'm seeing it's permeated through these rooms. And I'm sure you get the same experience. Like, even if I'm not like in a frame of mind to like really dig into my heavy stuff, if I can be there just to support somebody through theirs, it lightens my load a little bit as well. We get to keep what we give away.
Yeah, and it makes you show up. Like, you're showing up still. Right. You don't even realize it. You go, wow, I don't feel great. Most of the time you don't have a support system and you don't show up. But then you do, when you do have a support system and you have a room and you have a Bryson or a Grant or, Josh or Rich Gross. I mean, all these people that you can rely on to, if they need help, be like, yeah, this is awesome. I get to provide value to this guy. Wow, yeah. That's incredible. Now I got life back in me. And you go out and you end up creating content yourself or do a deal yourself. So yeah, that's a big part. Like, you don't realize when other people rely on you, that actually brings you life, and it pulls everybody up, and that's truly impactful and whatnot. But I want to wrap this up with talking about the Gateway to Freedom conference. And I know you got 30 plus expert speakers from, you got like some of the top women in real estate investing, some of the, obviously, some of these people in that room clearly know what they're doing. And I know you have some great, options in terms of ticketing. And so where can everybody go for that?
Yeah. So best place to go would be our website, www.g2free.com, g2free.com, Gateway to Freedom. So yeah, g2free.com. And then we've got, like you said, there's multiple options in regards to tickets. We have sponsorships as well. We're looking for any sponsors that are interested. Still could use a lawyer. Still could use a couple, like an investor friendly agent. We've got tons of sponsorship opportunities for that. And then also, regardless of, whether or not you want to sign up, and this is for anybody from like the new investor all the way up to the seasoned investor, we've got different ticket levels. And even this year we added a half day. If you go with the platinum, you get a half day business training session, which includes 5 different speakers talking on anything from sales to growth, to scaling, to systems, processes. They're more on building your business. And then the Friday and Saturday are more investor education with individual speakers. And then we've got a couple panels. And then also, so you go on, pick your ticket. And then we also have a 3-pay option this year, which is different than last year. We added that. So put tons of different levels, tons of different ways to pay. And then we've also got a couple different promotions right now. I don't know if this is going to come out by the end of September, but we do have where you can do group packaging, where you get a discount on like silver tickets, which are our mid ones. And then you've got like buy one, get one half off as well. So we're running a couple different promotions in September to help move tickets. So,
yeah, that's awesome, because I know how hard it is for people to spend money on themselves right now, because it's a very uncertain time. And so like I see some of these offers right now, it's kind of like interest rates. They're not going to stay low forever. And some of these offers to get in these rooms, like they're not going to stay like this forever. It's just people are trying to show people that there's value out there to get them in these rooms. And then once people understand that, they understand the value that's provided and the changing in their lives.
Yeah. And last year we had right at about 100 attendees, and the feedback we got more than anything else was that the event was phenomenal. People got tons of value from it. They also, a lot of the feedback we got is like, we can't believe it was your first event. Like, it was so well done, thanks to Mary, as well as, the other people we had supporting us. And yeah, it really is a group effort. And that's really for us. Like, we want to show that in St. Louis, especially, but in the investing communities, like, it is about collaboration to create something that is greater than you could do by yourself. And so, yeah, whether you need education, whether you need resources, whether you need vendors, whether you need connections, like whatever you're needing in your business and your real estate world, like, we will have it at Gateway to Freedom. And make the investment. And like I said last year with people, if you don't get like 10 times your investment back, which you can get tickets right now for like $300, if you don't get 10 times your investment back, $300 is like half a wholesale deal nowadays. If you don't get 10 times your investment back, you came into that room with the wrong expectation, and you really weren't there to grow your business. You were there to find a way to, like, say you lost your investment with your money. That's really the only way you won't get like the ability to come back or to get your money back.
And I like to say it's creative financing, not wholesaling. I'm not a big W guy. I'm not a big W guy.
No.
I go, that's a kind of like a official that's not really licensed. No, I go, you need to call a realtor.
Yeah. Creative deal.
Creative deal. Yeah, no. Well, no, I know. Yeah, you're definitely going to get your value back in that room. And to just be in, like I'm saying, it's hard to understand to be in the room with seasoned investors if you're a newcomer, but that is where people start to like you and they see your true self. And then all of a sudden they want to do business with you. And then guess what happens? You get more food on your table and everything gets better.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, like in these rooms, like there's a great story, Lee Fjord, he runs Tours and Pours. I don't know if you're familiar with him, multifamily networking event, but he just talked last month at his event where he was given a deal structure, and he met the investor that was the equity partner and provided $600,000 in financing for his deal. He was the sole investor. He met him at one of these conferences a year beforehand and built that connection, and then reached out to him when he had a deal a year later. And the guy was like, yeah, let's do it. And so, and then like last year, I know we connected with one of the speakers who was the multifamily guy. And then Laura and I, we worked with him for a little bit and got some education. We tried to do a deal. It didn't work. But from that, we ended up working, and like we're working multi-million-dollar deals now because of that experience and from that help that we got from him. Like these rooms have the ability to elevate not just your business, but yourself if you're open to it and willing to make those investments.
Wow. Yeah. That, I mean, he couldn't have wrapped it up better myself, but, and the one thing is there's enough to go around. Like there's enough for everyone. That's, I think, another fear that people have is they go, well, there's so many people in this room. How am I going to get business? There's enough to go around. I can promise that. So that's one thing. Just put yourself in this room, go to g2free.com, go on there, learn about it, and get yourself in this room, because I'm going to have to probably be there October 17th, 18th, and 19th. I appreciate you coming on here, Josh.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, sir.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And as always, let's remember to elevate together. All right, see you next time.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review and tell your friends about the show. Until next time,